Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Dr. Schuster and Oxley, The Power of Stories. We're joined today by Matt Hutson, our esteemed guest, aka BookMattic. We'll introduce him in a moment. Helmut, I was reflecting, given the subject matter and given who BookMattic is, on my relationship with books over the years. And I was thinking back to the 90s and how I used to read maybe just one book a month. It was hard copy. My go-to was Stephen King, and I typically discovered books because someone either referred me, said something to me, or I went to a library, or I just browsed around a bookstore. These are in the days before Waterstones and Barnes and Noble. And my reading was almost entirely solitary. I used to read a lot on the train going in and out of London. And I compare that to how I read today. If I fast forward to 2025, I'm probably reading 3 to 4 books a week across multiple formats: Kindle, physical copies, online serializations. I listen to 2 or 3 podcasts. I listen to 10 or 20 Instagrams, BookMattic being one of them. And I absorb their reviews and their recommendations. I use the websites, the Bookstagram websites. I use the Goodreads site. I use Amazon to get all my recommendations and feeds. I subscribe to the service Kindle Unlimited. And I was thinking to myself, is that counterintuitive? Do we think that people read less today than they did 30 or 40 years ago? So I did a little research, and apparently Gen Z are the biggest consumer of, in a broader sense of reading, of any of the previous generations that have existed. And I think in a way this seemed counterintuitive to me, because social media in a way distorts our idea of reading. Surveys show apparently half of Gen Z read weekly, often blending print and digital and audio formats. And so I think this relationship with books and the idea that books somehow are antiquated instruments to deliver knowledge is probably unfair. And I thought I'd ask your reaction to this, Helmut. What's your experience?
Well, my experience is actually not that dissimilar. And I'm right now in Vienna. And in Vienna, there are 3 very, very big bookstores just very near my home, within walking distance. And one is actually literally 1 minute. And what I find the most amazing thing, most of the stores like fashion boutiques are empty. The bookstores, you always have to queue to get a book, which I find very, very interesting, considering that I would have assumed that people read digital formats, but I think people love books. And that's like me. I still read most of my books like in paper books. I love the feeling. I love the experience of reading a book. However, I think much better in picking the right books, and like people like Matt and BookMattic helped me to identify books I like. I'm a big fan of Blinkist, basically that does summaries of books. And, if I really like it, I think I'm going to buy the book. So in the past, it was like hit or miss when I bought a book, when I was in my teens or in my 20s. Now, most of the books I buy and I own are really, really quality books. I do enjoy from page 1 to the last page. So yes, it has changed, but I do believe reading is currently experiencing a big renaissance.
Well, that seems like a good point to introduce our guest today. I keep referring to him as BookMattic. He's actually really Matt Hutson. Matt and I have known one another, or we've known Matt now for 3 or 4 years since we debuted our first book. He's an educator, an entrepreneur, a passionate advocate for reading and personal development. Originally from Portland, Oregon, Matt moved to Indonesia in 2011 to teach English. His experience broadened his horizons. While living abroad, he discovered the transformative power of books. I think he's always been a reader, but I think the power of books was something that occurred to him even more when he was away from home. He talks about being inspired by Robert, is it Kiyosaki's Second Chance? Is that, if I pronounced that correctly?
Yep.
And began exploring topics ranging from personal finance to mindset and productivity. And motivated to share his insights and help others leverage reading to improve their lives, Matt launched BookMattic, a platform which promotes the power of reading and suggests books that may be transformative for others. BookMattic's grown into a vibrant community. That's how we came to meet with Matt, through that forum, that platform. And Matt is married. He's got a proud father of a daughter who we have seen in libraries, accompanying him on his literary adventures. So, Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
What's your experience with reading? Has it changed over the last 20, 30 years? Are you consuming more or less?
Yeah, so I mean, like recently, just slightly less. I'm focusing more on quality. But like when I first discovered my passion for reading and learning and education, I was just devouring books left and right. This was around like 2015, which you mentioned the book. The first book that I picked up that really got me into reading was Second Chance by Robert Kiyosaki. And then from that point, it was just like diving into like all sorts of self-help, nonfiction books, anything that basically piqued my curiosity. Because I know that once you pique your curiosity, you can't stop it. You know, it's an unstoppable force, and I think that curiosity is something that everyone should try to strive to continue to develop over the years. So,
Unless you're a cat.
right, right, yes,
Sorry.
curiosity killed the cat.
Um,
Yep. Yep.
Helmet, do you have some questions?
Yeah, just a few questions. It's just meant to get to know you a bit better, and 4 or 5 and easy to answer. I'm going to start with a very easy question. You started reading 2015. In my world, I always thought reading and books can become an addiction. I think it's a positive addiction, but nevertheless. So how many books have you roughly read in your life, in your entire life? Roughly, take a guess.
Yeah, like David, I actually keep track of my books on Goodreads. So I've tracked exactly the number of books since I started tracking, which I started tracking right around 2013, I think. So I was a reader a bit before 2015, but not so heavy. Anyway, to answer your question straight up, I've I've read 400 then.
Wow, wow, wow. I could not actually give you my number. I wouldn't know, but I started reading very early when I was like a teenager already. So out of these books, what is what is the one book you really treasure? What is your favorite book? I don't like the word favorite book, but what's the book that really impacted you the most, I guess?
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, I do have quite a bit of favorites. It just depends on the genre as well. Like if I'm talking about nonfiction books or if I'm talking about fiction books, like I will have a different answer. And it also depends on my mood as well. But I would have to say, going along the lines of curiosity, one of my favorite books most recently that I've read is The Hidden Habits of Genius by Craig Wright, PhD.
Uh-huh.
That one
Uh-huh.
was really in depth. It talked a lot about the geniuses and what it means to be a genius, different from being a prodigy. Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting book that really got me interested. I think I finished it in around, I think so, like a good 4 years ago. So I'd highly recommend that one if you're interested in finding out more about how curiosity and how genius is formed.
Okay, noted. I think it's the next on my list. So thank you very much. A few more questions before we hand over to you for your story. I would be very interested. You lived in Indonesia for a long, long time. What is your dream city? What is the city of your dreams?
The city of my dreams. I need to travel more. That's what I need to do. But I mean, like, I really
Is this
love.
favorite place to live or visit?
No, basically the city where he wants to go, where he wants to either, if he has been there, where would you like to go back? It could be in Indonesia, or like a city I would like to go to because you've read so much about it.
Definitely a tough question, but just the one that pops into my mind, just because I feel so strongly about it, is Kyoto, Japan. Kyoto, Japan is a lovely place. I've been there a good 3 times. It's just so peaceful there. It's one that I would love to like revisit and just like go to the different shops and the cafes and the temples. And I mean, if I could have that right here in the city that I live in right now, Vancouver, Washington, or in Portland or something, I would love to just be in that environment all the time. Such a lovely place. And it's cool because it's modern, but also traditional as well. Not quite like Tokyo, which is mostly modern, but with a little bit of a traditional. Kyoto is just like, it's almost like another world, so peaceful.
So, Matt, this is the last question I'm going to ask, and it's a very specific question, yeah. And if you can't remember that, that is fine, yeah. But it really interested me. So, I think it must have been shortly after you interviewed David. We had this podcast about Career Carol. You posted something. It must have been September 2024. And I remember because I Blinkist the book and I really liked it. It's called The Power of Writing It Down.
Mm, yeah.
Um, I really, really, I'm not sure, David, have you heard of the book? Have you read it? It
I
is
have heard of
really,
it.
really, it is really, I mean, I still remember it, and it was a long time ago. So any ideas or how you related to it or why you put it on your list?
Mhm. Yeah, so I would say it's definitely one of my favorite, but like top 100. Like I said, I
Okay,
read
cool.
450, which is quite a bit. That's definitely in my top 100 because I've always been a fan of writing things down. Since I was in elementary school, I had this tutor who basically encouraged me to start a journal. And then since then, I've kind of kept that habit, although I've stopped it here and there. But it's writing has always been kind of part of who I am. I feel that it's special because once you write something down, it just stays there. There's something kinesthetic about writing things down. It helps me to remember as well. I've always got my notebook sitting on my desk. If I ever want to look at something that I've written down, I can just flip through the pages and, see it
Yeah.
there. It's a reminder. So, yeah, I love writing things down.
Okay. Just to say, it really, really, just this post on your Instagram really inspired me to read, and I loved the book. It is so rich. So thank you for that. And now I think, David, do you want to introduce the story,
Well,
or
I've
I'm
got
going
my
to do that?
moleskin here. Let me just see what's the next thing I've put on my to-do list. Talking about writing things down.
Very.
I think, Matt, over to you to share your story. What is it that you'd like to share with us today?
All right, great. So this story comes from a book that I read back in 2011, and I would say maybe this book even was a spark in my mind in my journey to continually seek knowledge. It's called Kushiel's Dart by Jacqueline Carey, and it's an epic fantasy series that developed a bit of a cult following, and I probably count myself as one of those fans. Proudly count myself. The world of Crucial's Dart is rich and intricate, part political intrigue, part romance, part coming of age story. It's set in a land inspired by Renaissance Europe, filled with noble houses, gods, spies, culture built around love and service. The main character, Pedre No Delani, grows up as what some would call flawed. She bears a red mark in her eye that sets her apart, a physical sign that shapes her destiny throughout the whole series. In her society, she's sold into the houses of the Night Court, where she's trained not only in the art of seduction, but also in languages, in diplomacy, and human psychology. Eventually, she earns her freedom, but by that point, she's also developed a very sharp mind and a deep awareness of how power and compassion can relate and intertwine. One line that has stayed with me since that point in 2011 was, knowledge is worth having. That idea struck me, stuck with me, and it still does. It's simple but profound. In a world where people often specialize in things, dismiss certain topics, or fear what they don't understand, this line reminds me that curiosity itself is power, not in a manipulative sense, but in a human sense. Knowledge opens up the door to empathy, to seeing through someone else's eyes, and that's something I've tried to live by throughout my own career, staying curious, learning continuously, especially as an educator, and being open minded, even when something challenges my worldview. I've learned that knowledge without empathy can become arrogance. But when knowledge is combined with empathy and love, it becomes transformative. It changes how we listen to others, how we connect with others, and how we lead. That's where another reoccurring theme in this book comes. The quote is, "As thou wilt." It's the genuine or the guiding phrase that Pedre uses. It's part of her faith, meaning love freely without condition or prejudice, even your enemies, even those who misunderstood you. It's a radical idea, but to love is not a transaction. It's a way of being for this character. What moves me most about her journey is that she's not physically strong. She's not powerful in that sense. She's not a warrior. She survives through her mind, her intuition, and her heart. She turns what others see as weakness into her greatest strength. And I think that's why this story resonates with me so much. I can see parts of me in that character. In real life, we all have flaws as well. So things we wish were different about ourselves, but are not. I've come to realize that some of those traits can often be shaped into our own greatnesses. I've also seen how often people underestimate those who may be quiet or gentle or thoughtful, people who might not seem strong in body, but who are unshakably strong in their mind. So Pedre reminds me that resilience doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through curiosity, compassion, and through learning. And that's what I take from Kushiel's dart. All knowledge is worth having, especially when it's guided by love, because knowledge without love can divide us, but knowledge fueled by love can heal.
I think I mean, first of all, we should probably do this and say thank you.
Very, very nice story.
I mean, I will say that's the most comprehensive analysis of a story that we've had to date. And I love that. It's going to sell a few books for the author, I think, this particular episode. So there are a couple of themes that it would be lovely to pull out and just discuss a little bit more. I don't know that there are wrong or right answers to this, but the one I'm going to start with is perhaps the obvious one. It is interesting to me that we take inspiration from fictional literature and we find meaning that gives us answers to life. And this is a recurring theme. I mention it because all too often in our own professional lives, we've suggested to people that we mentor or people that we are trying to help in their careers, and we suggest, a traditional business book, and that their faces screw up as if it's a visit to a dentist or something. And so by comparison, if we start to entertain the wisdom of Harry Potter, it's a very different context. And I feel like this book fits into that sort of domain of there is enjoyment fundamentally in reading it, but there are deeper lessons. What was your reaction?
Well, my reaction was, firstly, I'm deeply moved the way you drew out like insights, yeah. And I took down a few notes, and I think we should dive into that. You said all knowledge is worth having. However, knowledge without empathy is basically arrogance, but knowledge with empathy is very transformative. And I so agree with that. Yeah. I mean, that could be on a podcast in its own right. I think the also thing I really, really liked that it took away is that you said, well, the character is not really very strong physically, but the strength come from within. And I think this is also, and we worked for a company whose CEO once said, listen to the quiet voice in the room. And what you just recounted told us, yeah, is the similar thing. Yeah, strength comes from within, and it's not physical strength. So I find that very, very interesting. So I would ask you why. I mean, obviously that must have resonated with you. And can you go a bit deeper into like saying knowledge with empathy is transformative?
Yeah, like there's so many people out there who try to control situations, I think, who are dominant of others. And I think sometimes those people are people who lack a little bit of empathy. Maybe they're not good at listening, or maybe not even caring what those who they want to say something sometimes, but they're maybe fearful of what other people might think. And I think that's where that quiet power comes from, and the ability to like realize, well, maybe I'm not as dominant as other people, but if I can express my feelings and my thoughts and my knowledge, maybe in the way that those other people can, then they can come out on top. Their knowledge will come out, their curiosity will come out, their power will come out if they're able to actually get their word in. So I think people balancing their not trying to dominate all the time would be beneficial for a lot of us, I think.
What was the other thing that you picked out, Helmut?
Well, knowledge, and I think that the notion of love, I mean, that was one thing. Obviously, love combined with knowledge, yeah, is something very special that basically the physical appearance is not, yeah, that important. It's what's going on in a person's brain. And I like that as well, how you described that, or how the character of Petra, is Petra her name? Petra? Is the name of the character?
Yeah, it comes from France. So I'm actually probably butchering the name, but
Yeah, no,
I would
that's
say
okay.
the pronunciation may be Fedre, maybe? Or
Fedre, okay,
Fedra.
good. Fedre, yeah.
Yeah.
This idea of quiet power, of knowledge and empathy and um, not physical, overwhelming power, I think is interesting in a professional sense. Matt, can you say that the book had meaning for you professionally? I mean, there's we consume books sometimes, and they do have an effect on us. And I wonder whether or not we're conscious of how they shape decisions that we then make. So, can you point to how the book you think had any effect on how you lived your life, choices that you subsequently made?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that really stuck with me, as I mentioned earlier, is all knowledge is worth having. Now, we can interpret this quote a little bit here because like is all knowledge worth having? Maybe like I've gotten the habit of like before where I would just read vigorously without actually doing anything with the knowledge, and that's not good, right? So professionally, yes, it is great to be curious. It's great to want to know more things, to want to apply more things, but it is like we have to find the balance between acquiring knowledge and doing something with it. So this relates definitely to careers because I think anyone who is working right now should be continually developing themselves, should be continually reading or seeking out information, whether it's through YouTube or podcasts or books. It's great to be curious. It's great to want to know more. But we also have, yeah, like I said, always have to balance it with actions, with, yeah,
Okay, this is
practical.
this is a very interesting statement, which I will probably not 100% agree with. From my own experience, think knowledge. I don't have to do anything with all the knowledge I have. Sometimes it helps me to position my activities and decisions in this context. So I might not do specifically. So I have my PhD in economics, and I really haven't done anything with economics. Nothing really. Yeah. So you might have said it's very useless to have a PhD in economics. However, it having the context of being an economist helped me in so many other ways of living, and I did not specifically anything with that. And as you, I think you also like very interested in finance. So how would you relate to that? Do we really need to do something with all the knowledge we have?
Great point. Great point. Well, we could also use a similar story about Steve Jobs, right? I mean, this is probably a very well-known story where he
Yeah,
went to Reed College. He took the like art class or design or something, and then he didn't apply it right away. But when he, designed the Apple, he
that's
took that into consideration. So yes, in that sense, we don't necessarily need to apply all of our knowledge, but I feel that we need to make sure that we somehow, I don't know, our brains are amazing organs, right? We can retain a lot of information. So if we are learning about something, but we don't apply it right away, maybe later we can somehow find a way to combine ideas. And that's how new ideas are created. That's how creativity works, right? Is combining your prior knowledge with new knowledge and then creating something. So yes, you're absolutely right. You don't necessarily need to apply it right away.
Right away. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
I think the thing I would bridge to as well, which is I think where Matt sort of had me going a moment ago, was the accumulation of knowledge for the sake of it can be counterproductive. The analysis paralysis context, where in a business sense that there's always one more piece of data that is somehow going to make it perfect. And in reality, that's not true. So the pursuit of knowledge, when it becomes a distraction from action, a distraction from a distraction from getting something done, I think could be counterproductive. But I think I do agree that in the current context, with artificial intelligence providing us with so much more access to information, how we use it and having the ability to see connections between things that perhaps previously were not available to us, I think is where humanity, where we continue to add value, that creative spark that sees, I remember this from that either book or something I learned some years ago. In Steve Jobs' case, it was the fonts that he learned that then became a feature of the Macintosh. I think I see that more and more. So Helmut, you're very much one who talks about think, do. Do you not see
In
the parallel
exactly
there?
that order, yeah.
Exactly that order.
So my thing is, I say think, do, in exactly that order, because I do believe people don't think sufficiently, and as a result of that, we live in a mess of a world. If everyone would be more thoughtful, I think it would be a better world. So you're absolutely right, David. Can we bridge to one thing which I find really interesting? We talked information, David. You talked information. We talked about knowledge. Yeah. So for me, there's a distinction between information and knowledge. And Matt, you talked about original thinking, originality, creativity, and I'm using AI quite a bit. What I currently don't see is this. I've never received any kind of original ideas from AI. And I think currently the way it operates right now, I think it's probably not possible. Do you see a world where AI will replace original thinking done by humans? And how far is it out for you?
As of right now, no. I see the use of generative AI as like a thinking buddy. I've written some posts and done some videos on this topic on the BookMattic YouTube channel and Learning to Learn Well newsletter, where basically like we can use this as a tool, as like almost like a sounding board, I guess, to like bounce our ideas off and clarify our ideas. But it's not, the generative AI is not like being creative itself. It's just, thinking of the next best word. It's telling us what it thinks we want to hear a lot of the time. So that also could put us in a dangerous spot, is like we're basically we're seeking something to confirm our own ideas, I think. But I definitely see it as a very useful tool. I see it as a thinking buddy, an editing partner, and we should always still try to have that human component in there, though, because it's creating a lot of slop and also misinformation as well. A lot of people don't double check the information before publishing it. And then where's the AI getting its new information from? From false information that has already been published. So it could be a very vicious cycle that is creating slop sometimes. So yeah, we still really need the human component. And unless there's, what do you call it? AGI or something like that that's developed, we are still safe in the realm of creativity. And we should try to use this as a tool. People who are not really using it as a tool, I think, will fall behind those who are.
You have a very healthy relationship to AI that can very much relate to that. So, David, over to you now.
There's a lot talked about that high school kids are given book assignments and they just use ChatGPT to summarize it and they don't actually read it. So the question then becomes the superficiality of that. Does it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I think that students should definitely learn the fundamentals. Like a lot of the authors out there, they state if you don't know the fundamentals of writing first, then your writing is just going to be mediocre. Even if you're using generative AI tools, it's just going to be mediocre. And then, of course, if you're just solely basing your ideas on what is generated for you, then you're not going to learn anything from it. So students who are just solely using it, I'm not sure if they're learning too much because they're not actually putting the effort, and learning requires effort. If there's not a little bit of pain in there, then there's no growth. So no pain, no gain. So yeah, we really have to be careful. And I think that there should be some classes or education on how to actually prompt and how to actually learn and dig deeper, because it is a useful research tool. You can really read a lot of information out there if you're using generative AI. And then Google just came out with their own search, like it appears right in the search. I think that's useful because then you can follow the links and then do more deeper research. So yeah, students should be educated, not just solely blindly using it without actually learning the fundamentals first.
Well, this is a useful bridge to the last part of our podcast. One of the things that we've been talking about in the professional world is whether schools, education institutions are doing an effective job of preparing people for professional life. Is there a gap between the education that you now receive at high school and college and what is required or what is useful in the professional world? And I know, Matt, you've worked a lot on curriculum development, on the power of reading as a key to unlocking much of the answers to these questions. But perhaps it would be really interesting to get your perspective on, if you're a parent of a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid, and there's all this news about artificial intelligence, and professions like accountancy and journalism are increasingly looking like endangered species. So how would you advise parents to think about getting their kids, if they're in their middle teenage years, ready for the professional life?
Yeah, really tough question because, the education system is not necessarily doing the best that it can do. It's a behemoth, right? It's big. It's hard to move. It's hard to there's a lot of regulations to try to change the curriculum. That takes time. And so there's all the useful tools online that students can use right now on their own. They can do a lot of personal learning, which I would recommend to parents to fill in the gaps, what schools are not teaching, whether it's financial literacy or coding or prompt engineering, looking for fields that are, as of right now, they are very, they're growing. I try to look for fields that are growing and then build skills in those areas. And of course, you cannot force every single child into that same field because then it would be oversaturated. So I would say also just keep an open mind too, and develop critical thinking skills, analytical skills, communication. All of those skills are not necessarily developed in schools. So parents need to be aware of that, and then try to help their kids, give them examples, show them by example, sign them up on certain education websites there's the Elon Musk school called Synthesis, and also there's the Subject Technologies Inc., which is my current contract work. They create a curriculum for students to learn from, and it's very current, which is nice. So yeah, there's so many different things that parents can do. Just be aware, keep open-minded, and stay on top of it.
Helmut, do you want to pose Matt your favorite question?
Yeah, I just want to, I'm very reflective. That is a very good podcast. I think it was very thought-provoking. And before I ask you the final question, I give you a book tip. Is a lady called Dr. Susan Greenfield. She's a neuroscientist, and she published a book in 2003 called Tomorrow's People. And the thesis of the book is that in probably today's world is people get bombarded with information, but they don't have the reference system. And one of the key tasks is to provide these tomorrow's people with a reference system to interpret the information they get. And I find that very, very provoking and very insightful at the time. But the question is always like, we really enjoyed the podcast so far. What is the one pearl of wisdom? What is the one advice you would give a young person in 2025?
Even if the world might seem a little bit bleak, there's always something new out there for you to learn. Like, let's go back to the quote from the book, "All knowledge is worth having." So be a curious person. Get out there, learn what you want to learn the skills, not just what you want to learn. Try not to get trapped in just one particular field. Like I learned a lot of mistakes from my past, getting trapped in one particular thing. Make sure that you're broadening your horizons, compare options before you dive into one particular thing. Always stay curious. All knowledge is worth having.
Curiosity, the next superpower. Well said. Thank you. David.
Yes. Thank you, Matt, for the thoughts, the book, the discussion. I agree with Helmut. It's been very stimulating, very rewarding. Before I close out, I want to say a couple more things about BookMattic and Matt. A couple of things that he and I have been discussing over the space of the last month. The idea of using business books and other books to inspire younger authors to get into the workplace and to contribute. And I want to just sort of sign off a little bit before I move on to close the podcast by saying I'll leave some links in the podcast to Matt's website and his Substack so that people can access his newsletter, which is very informative, but also some of his tutoring work that he is doing around reforming the education syllabus and system to make it more future ready and to put reading and comprehension at the heart of all of that. So again, thanks, Matt, for that. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you'll probably enjoy the other podcasts. We have done nearly 20 podcasts now. If you enjoyed the podcast, the one thing that Helmut likes to guarantee is that you'll definitely enjoy the books. We have 3 books out there now, A Career Carol, which is how we came to meet Matt Hutson, Groundhog Career, and in November, Artificial Death of a Career will be out there dealing with some of the subjects we've talked about today, artificial intelligence, how we adjust ourselves to be adaptable enough to take advantage of it rather than a victim of it. And finally, we have other content out there on Instagram, LinkedIn, and our award-winning website. We got some awards last week that we're quite proud of. So that's enough from me. Matt, any final words?
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's been great talking with you guys. Very good to meet you, Helmut and David, today, and everyone else who's listening. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to the entire episode. We all work hard right now, especially in today's world. So, your support as well is meaningful. And one of the big things that I'm working on right now is the Learning to Learn Well newsletter on Substack. So I would really appreciate if you check that one out, and also the BookMattic YouTube channel, which is where I do a lot of my work too. So if you have the time, please do check it out.
And Helmut.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very inspiring, very stimulating. So thank you so much. And as always, Servus und auf Wiedersehen until next time.
Goodbye, everyone.